Have you ever wondered how to successfully navigate a career shift, go after your dreams, incorporate movement, yoga, journaling, all those things into your life? Well, look no further. Listen to this IG Live and find out just that. Hi, my name's Laura, and on this channel, I help you gain optimal health through knowledge and movement. Hello, everyone. We are starting live. Hi, Karen. So nice to see you. Hi, Caroline. Let's go ahead and get you to join. Ooh.
Hello.
Hello.
What's up?
I knew you would be joining me from outside. I knew it. I thought about it and I thought about it and I was like, I almost bet she will be coming from outside and I love it.
Oh my gosh, I feel like a hippie earth mama.
I think that's great.
It's so nice.
So I am so happy to chat with you and have you on today. It was so amazing listening to your takeover.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So before we dive in, why don't you just do a little intro about yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm super stoked to be here and I love your account. So thank you, Laura, for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm Caroline from Love by Caro. So my whole business kind of evolved in COVID. I currently teach yin yoga. I do business coaching, cacao ceremonies. I'm very centered on finding your truth and how to get creative entrepreneurs launched and organized. So I have a group program called Virgo Vibes where we go through goal setting. So I just love just kind of the masculine container for the feminine flow. And I'm based in Atlanta. I was an accountant for 4 years in Denver and quit my job last year to travel and went to Europe and then did South America up until COVID. So yeah, that's kind of the quick and dirty.
Quick, down and dirty.
Exactly.
Yes. So, so many questions. So one of my big questions is, first of all, it has to do with your takeover. Tell me about this cacao ceremony. So I didn't get a chance to join, but I'm like super intrigued and I need to like get the next one on my calendar. But I have I read about a cacao ceremony in a book, and so I was like, okay, like what is this? So can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, definitely. So any kind of ceremony, it's to help increase consciousness and just gather in community. And with ceremonial cacao, you probably have heard of like Hershey's cocoa powder. So ceremonial cacao has the cacao butter with kind of like that powder infused into it. So it's just less processed. And that way you can absorb all the wonderful minerals, antioxidants with that fat content. And it's grown in South America. So I love Cacao King. It's grown in Ecuador. I actually have a code Caro10 if you want 10% off on Cacao King. And essentially what we do in a ceremony is we do introductions, open up the circle, have a meditative experience with our cacao. So I make it, it's like ultra hot chocolate. So I do like nut milk, cacao, some sweetener, cinnamon's really nice. And we bless the cacao and then kind of start doing journaling and dancing after we start drinking it and open up the circle for sharing. And that's kind of the flow for my ceremonies. And they've been really fun to do virtually.
That's really awesome. Have you found it challenging or just kind of different to create community through this sort of virtual space?
Yeah, it's funny. I honestly think it's been easier virtually for me. A lot of virtual events and keep my eye out for that. Sorry, I don't know if my connection paused, but I think
Yes.
it's easy with virtual stuff. So essentially my recommendation is build a Facebook group. I think that's the only way to build community in the social media platform right now. Go to as many events you can, follow up with people on DMs and Instagram, and just like make genuine connections. So it's been a lot easier for me to cultivate community on these kind of platforms.
Wow, that's really awesome because I think, you know, now more than ever we need that community, and that's something that I think the world is hurting for is community, and I think that a lot of people don't know how to do that. So how did you kind of figure that out? Was that just like trial and error or
Yeah, so I did a retreat in Costa Rica at the end of February in a town called Uvita, where Envision Festival is. It's super cool. You'd love it. They have a red tent where it's all woman stuff, and like you can be topless in there. I
mm-hmm,
bought my yoni, like you can get a wand. They have yoni
mm-hmm,
eggs. So essentially, that retreat, we started meeting on Zoom right when COVID hit at the end of March, and
mm-hmm.
just cultivated that community, did cacao together. We had like 20 girls at the retreat. And I really was just inspired by how powerful all the women were. And I was just really called to follow my heart. I had no clue when I got back home from traveling. I was back in my childhood room. I'm almost 29. So, of course, it's like kind of humbling experience to first be on a high of like traveling and freelancing, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, freelancing hours are cut, the world's going to shit. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I really dove into like what I loved and focused on like what is fun. And that's what I tell my clients, like what is fun, like make business fun, make things flowy, because that energy really radiates from you. So I was able to just like start doing yin yoga classes online, and then I did a cacao ceremony online just because it felt fun. So like that's kind of how I build my community.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I think the I saw that you did share that code in that Cacao King, and I'm like, oh, I have to check that out because even as a kid, what I used to do as part of my wind down routine was I would always have hot chocolate, and so I think
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of interesting now as an adult realizing there's this whole ceremony around cacao. So I think that's really cool.
I think you'd love it. Cacao is great in the morning for creativity, your meditation practice, just like opening up the heart chakra. It's great for it, literally expands your blood vessels. And then at night, too. I recommend kind of experimenting. Like for me, I'm not super sensitive. It's not like coffee, like it does not have any caffeine, but it can really energize some people.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you can do it definitely in any morning or evening routine, which is really fun.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So now, so you had so you have a background as an accountant, and
Yes.
then I know you talked about how you got through this yin yoga and all of that, but like as an accountant, do they also teach you all of this like business acumen? Because I
Mm.
think it's so cool how you talk about, having these really great business ideas and giving people business direction and all of that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I took a few MBA electives. I got my master's of accounting. Usually the accounting track, it's 5 years to sit for the CPA exam. So I have my master's in accounting. So I got marketing classes through business school, finance. I didn't learn anything about sales or community building, but essentially I just learned through podcasts and learning on Instagram, following people. And then I started investing in courses last year for like life coaching and how to launch a personal brand, how to run a business. And then I took like some entrepreneurship classes through a community college. So yeah, just kind of
Wow,
self-taught. But I'm really a huge fan of just like doing courses to learn anything. Like Udemy, Coursera are great options.
that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So, how many clients would you say you're working with now?
Now I have 4 one-on-one clients. I want to have 5. So I have one spot left.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do a group coaching program starting at the end of August called Virgo Vibes. So that's going to be the round 2. And that is more focused on like the dreamer who needs personal organization. Like we do 1 year plans, 5 year goals, 10-year vision. We write
Wow.
an obituary. So yeah, it's been really easy, honestly, to get one-on-one clients because it's a huge need for people to get organized.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I feel like, oh, there's this like huge awakening, obviously, with everything that's going on, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's this pandemic. I was on an Instagram live last night. I was listening to someone and they were talking about how their business has been affected, and they were saying, gosh, I really hope things open back up in the next, month or so. And I'm thinking, I don't know that it's going to. And so it's like, how do you figure out ways around this, or, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the beautiful thing about a small business is you can pivot fast and be realistic. Like I'm a huge believer in being optimistic and having a positive outlook on life and really fueling yourself, but really project, like honestly, I'm kind of planning on being virtual for the next year. Is that conservative? Sure, but it makes a lot more sense. And being virtual allows you to be freedom independent, like location independent, like free financially. So I just think that people need to kind of wake up and take a conservative approach of, okay, like what are the different scenarios and how can I diversify my offerings where I can make money from a few different things instead of having all of your eggs in one basket.
Right. I really, really like that. I know that's something that I can see my social media person hasn't hopped on yet, but she is like always on my case about like doing like not diversifying. I know I want to diversify. It's more of a matter of like having the confidence to get my voice out there in a different way. I think when you go to school for one thing for so long, and then you go to kind of maybe push or step outside of that circle or that comfort zone, can sometimes have some discomfort, and it's it can just be uncomfortable.
Yeah, I totally hear you. And I definitely struggled with that. I built my Love by Caro started as just like an Instagram and a blog last year. And so I was still in my corporate job and I felt weird posting things because I had coworkers following me. I wasn't planning on quitting the job. That was never really the plan. It kind of just happened. And so it's hard to speak our truth. And what helps me is reading Brene Brown, and she's so authentic, like speaking your shame and really finding expanders in your life, like people who are already so in their power and just getting so fired up by them. I think that can be very activating. That's what's helped me a lot and my clients.
Yeah. So as you have kind of gone and shifted through this, have you, and you talked about like expanders and stuff like that, how have you run into people who have been the opposite of expanders?
Yeah, I think like my family, honestly, it's hard sometimes to share with them what I'm doing because they don't necessarily understand, and they want me to be safe and have a reliable income. So sometimes they question me, and I think that's hard. So I'm very private with my business sometimes at the dinner table. Like if someone just doesn't have the framework to process what I'm doing, then that's okay. But I haven't really gotten a lot of pushback on my Instagram. I mean, every Thursday I do Taboo Thursday and I post about everything like sex, drugs, anything taboo, money. And like everyone's loving it. No one's like, oh my gosh, Caroline, why are you posting about orgasms? So it's cool. I think we all are like interested in the truth and we are activated by that.
Yes, totally. I think it's fascinating how family can be one of those, one of the groups that we can run into. And I think you hit the nail on the head where they just want you to have income or money. Like I'll tell my dad, oh, I'm doing these Instagram lives. And he's like, oh, do you make money on that? And I'm like, no, Dad, that's not how it works. It's called social media. You have to be social, and just talking about different stuff. And it is, and I found it's been challenging to me, or even when I work with clients or patients, they even sometimes worry like, okay, so like, are you okay? Do you have enough people coming in? Like, what's going on here? And I'm like, okay, I'm okay. Like, so it is fascinating. Like you said, I think about how when I first ran into people who are maybe the opposite of expanders, and then now when I run into them, I'm able to weather that storm a little bit better, but can be interesting to the flow of your own creativity.
For sure. I think it's all energy, and it's like if you're kind of on like a higher vibration, it doesn't make you better than someone, but if they can't match that, it's kind of just like, like I just don't even have time for that. And you kind of have to be very strong. Like, this is my truth. And if you don't resonate with my truth, like I still love you and respect you, but I need to move on. And I think like the sober journey too, for me, I've been alcohol free for the past like 4 months with quarantine. That's really shed light on who's a true friend and who is just a friend that I would drink wine with and just gossip with. So that can be really fun too.
So what made you choose to do that?
I stumbled into it. I love being sober. Like, I have just periods of life where I do this. I started with it in 2019, and yeah, with quarantine at first, I was just like, it doesn't make sense to drink while I'm alone. I'm unemployed. Like, it just didn't feel right. And then I just kept doing it, and my all of my family drinks, and I'm just not tempted by it at all. Alcohol is just not my kind of drug of choice. Yeah.
I think it is. I think that's fascinating. So I used to do it like randomly in college and stuff. I would like randomly be like sober person and then not, and then randomly I would be sober for a while and then not. And then same after, like in PT school, and even I do that now. And it is so interesting because you'll get together and people will be like, just have a drink. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Like I've got my, like right now I've got my, I'm obsessed with sparkling water. I have my sparkling water. And I find for me, I need something to like have though. Like I need to have like something still tasty to drink. Like just water isn't gonna cut it. It has to be like sparkling water or flavored or something. I don't know.
Yes, I feel you. I love kombucha. I typically bring that over to friends, like make kombucha mocktails.
Yes.
But yeah, it's fun. Like I think I just don't drink enough water. That's probably my issue. I'm just like, okay, let's just not drink anything.
Yeah.
I'm always just sipping my coffee till like 3 p.m. and I have a smoothie. So yeah, definitely the water intake could be better.
Yes. So now I want to make sure that we have time to dive into your yoga practice because I find yin yoga to be very, very cool. And I know there is, or at least I think there's a distinct difference between restorative yoga and yin. So my understanding and what I have learned, and at least the yin classes I've taken versus the restorative classes, are the yin classes, I'm usually getting into positions and I'm feeling more of a stretch, and then I'm maintaining that stretch for an extended period of time so that I can really get that like opening through the joints, the ligaments, all of that. Whereas restorative, I'm not feeling as much of a stretch and I'm supporting myself into the posture and just kind of chilling there. So I find with yin, I have to be a little bit more mindfully present.
Yeah, you nailed it with the definition. Essentially, we covered that in my training. So yin yoga They avoid saying the word stretch, but it's
Mm-hmm.
hard for me not to because it's like literally what we're doing. We're stretching, but they say stressing the muscles. And we want about a 4 out of 10 on the sensation scale. And then restorative, it should be like you're weightless, like on a pillow, like not feeling anything, no
Mm-hmm.
stress on any of the muscles. So it's kind of like restorative would be the lowest tier of
Mm-hmm.
kind of movement, and
Mm-hmm.
yin's above it. It's so great for the fascia. It's so great to relax the mind. Like the benefits are endless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so just in case people don't know, the fascia is this lovely covering. So if you peel an orange, when you peel an orange, how the each little orange kind of is separated into its own little pieces, that is what fascia is. So it our muscles are covered in it. It's very slippery. It's supposed to slide and glide. Oftentimes, when I'm working with tissues, I will tell people things like when I'm pushing or working on their tissue, it feels sticky to me. It can feel boggy, tight, tough. So you can just kind of tell, like, if anyone has ever been around like a baby and you feel their like tissues and they're supple and squishy versus like you go and like maybe push on my neck and it kind of feels like gristly. That's kind of how our body has to, react to stress. And so when we can utilize things like yin yoga, we can get into those areas, but in a gentler way so it can allow that release and blood flow.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love how I'm like, so like, I do not love anatomy. I'm just like, like the medical stuff. I think I've told you, I mean, that's why I did accounting, right? So I love how you're able to way better explain the fascia than I am. But in training, they brought out an orange and she used that as an example. So I love that you brought that up.
Yes. Yes. I am an anatomy nerd. Like, I cannot wait until all of the stuff is set up in my business so that I can pull out my Netter anatomy and I just look through it like a picture book as if a child was looking through a picture book. That is how much of an anatomy nerd I am. My boyfriend and I will look through anatomy books together and we will talk about movement, and that is a favorite pastime of ours. That is like the degree of anatomy weirdos we are. So, yeah. So, what are some of your favorite postures or maybe favorite areas of the body to work into?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with yin, we typically hold the poses for 3 to 5 minutes. So I love happy baby. I think everyone's kind of aware where you're holding usually the inside of your feet or your ankles on your back. Feels so nice for the hips. And I like kind of rocking side to side to massage the spine, which can feel really nice. I love focusing on the hips. So like lizard or pigeon feels really, really nice on those hip flexors. And the reason I love that is the hips hold a lot of emotion. So when we're in these poses, we really open ourselves up energetically. Some people cry during practice, but I typically only cry after yin.
Mm.
And you'll notice it, like the more you practice yoga and yin especially, you really feel it emotional. Like you just want to cry. I feel like it's like being pregnant. I'm like, I just want to cry at everything. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
really nice to open everything up.
Right. And do you think that like, or do you give people something where, because it's this opening, do you tell people or give them things to help kind of not then close it, but just like kind of put a lid on their vessel or something? Like, because I know
Mm.
sometimes when people come to me, they are very vulnerable and open. And I've been thinking, like, gosh, it's so hard because I want to, like, get them in and out. And when I worked in corporate place, I wanted it in, out, done, in, out, done. But now when they come into my home, it's like, well, I don't want to just send you out and be done. I want you to like be okay and So I just kind of have been trying to ask around to people, how do you kind of help hold their vessel, so to speak, so they can go out and be okay in this world?
Yeah. So I think a big thing is like making sure they feel safe. So I
Mm-hmm.
have taken a few trauma courses from ITTI. The certified trauma professional course was really great. And like just making sure you're not like re-traumatizing them in any way and just being really informed about trauma. So that's a recommendation. And then relaxing the nervous system. So making sure that their nervous system is lowered and they really can like process all of these emotions and really feel things through. And I think that hour of yin is like a really good container for like things coming up, but then kind of like really moving through that and using body movement. And with yoga, we always end in corpse pose, savasana. So we typically do that for 10 minutes. And I'll always take people through a body scan. And a trauma-informed practice for that is starting at the feet. A lot of people go from the head to the feet, but you really want to start from the feet to the head because trauma can happen more likely with the head. Like, you know, God forbid someone gets punched,
Oh,
but
yeah.
with your feet, you're not really having any trauma there typically. So when you activate the body sensations from the feet upward, it makes the body feel more safe.
That's really,
So
really cool.
yeah, I learned that from Tracy. She's at a Thrive Life, Tracy
Mm-hmm.
Barber on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
She's fucking awesome with trauma. She's told me all the courses I need to take. She's like,
Mm-hmm.
does like mini trauma courses and she's very informed.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's so cool. So do you recommend to people like after they do a yin course or a yin class to then journal?
Yeah, that's a
Like, is
good
that
question too. Yeah, so basically I always am like, hey, like reach out to me if you need space held. Like a lot of people will usually text me or DM me. And then I don't specifically say journal after, but maybe I should start doing that. I think journaling is a great way to process emotions. And at cacao ceremonies, we journal during, and I recommend that specifically too for grief sessions. I do those with my death doula work. And I recommend journaling for that, like those really heavy emotions. It's so
Mhm.
needed.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's just, it seems like with all that stuff that probably comes up, and like you were saying with the crying and all of that, I wonder, how, like if writing it out, then if that, is something to kind of bring as a part of it, or if it, is just, like you said, for a different ceremony or any of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And I think with like yin yoga, it's donation based. So I'm not as like providing high level support as like a therapist would.
Oh, yeah.
So I definitely think journaling, I recommend that to anyone. If anyone comes to me and they're just feeling emotional, journaling's like the easiest kind of remedy for that because it's just so nice to get things out on paper. So I think that's just like an awesome way to process.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely think we're gonna have to get you like back on so we can like have you maybe do like your top 3 yin poses, or because I just like, or top 5 or whatever, because I think that's so so cool. Um I really think yoga has so many benefits, and I love how it's the movement with the breath and all of that stuff. And yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so relaxing. Like it'll change your life. And you can look up a lot on YouTube, or I teach yoga every Wednesdays on Zoom at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8
Mm-hmm.
Central for your followers. But I recommend YouTube. Like honestly, that's like the most accessible way to do yoga these days if you
Mm-hmm.
really want to do it on your own schedule. And it's so
Yeah.
nice we have that.
Yes. So okay, death doula.
Yes.
Okay, is this only for actual death, or could it be like loss of a job,
Mm-hmm.
or loss of a relationship, or actually death of a person, death of an animal?
Yeah, that's a great question. So grief is just that period after a loss. So you can grieve like grieve, have grief with anything you said, like even roommates, moving, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, family members. Yeah. And obviously the loss of a loved one or an animal. So everyone has grief. And with death doula work, they really focus on 3 parts in the training I did. I did it at Anelda, which is a nonprofit, and they focus on planning phase. So like when someone is passing, maybe they find out they have cancer, getting everything together. You know, what do you want your last days to look like? Are you building a legacy project? So the planning phase. Then we have the active dying phase, which is like when that person, it's usually about a week, a few days where they're dying and making sure their wishes are respected. And then the third part of death doula work is the grief process. So for me, hating medical things and being a huge empath, like right now, I'm just focused on the grief stage. So I do grief consultations over Zoom. And yeah, all of my calls have been around the death of a loved one, but we've gotten into a lot with like relationships as well. And a lot of people are surprised. They're like, wow, like, you know, am I grieving properly? What does grief look like? Like, is this crazy that I'm still not over it? And so it's a lot of just like normalizing feelings.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually asked to do some journal prompts around grief, and for this app that is for graduate students, and they actually asked me to do journal prompts for sexual wellness and sexual intimacy. And they're like, are there any other areas that you think that you could talk about? And so I was like looking at things that affect graduate students and college students. And one of the big things is, you know, grieving and loss. And it can be the loss of, you know, like we said, you know, a job, or just like even like failure, all of this stuff. And so I think it's really neat that you have that death doula training, because I don't think that's something the United States does very well.
Not at all. We hate taboos. We like to think we'll live forever. And the reality is we're all going to die. And it's better to talk about it, because you live a more deeper and richer life when you know your time is limited.
Right.
And I think that even goes back to like, you know, that fear of like sharing your true voice, telling your story, branching out to new avenues. When you contemplate your death, like for me, I had to pretend I was dying in 3 months and like role play as the patient. And when you think about it that way, you're like, fuck it. Like, I want to go all out and do what I love and serve my community. And I think it's really, really enriching when we think about these kinds of things.
Yeah. I remember when we first talked on the phone and you said that, I was like, wait, what did you just say? Because I was thinking, like, when you think of doula, you think of like someone giving birth, helping someone deliver a baby. And then you said death doula. And I was like, wait, excuse me, what? But I think that it totally fits with all of the stuff that you do, because it's the shifting and moving of energy and focus and all of that stuff. So I can see how it all connects.
Yeah, I was just on a podcast. It's called Wise Body Mind. You would really like it. And my friend Shan is the host, and we talked all about my death doula work. So if anyone's interested in like what grief is and just like how I got into that, give it a listen. If you just Google like Caroline Caruso Death Doula podcast.
Yeah, we can tag that. We put this up on YouTube as well. So we'll go ahead and tag it in the description.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's an interesting field.
Yes. I can't imagine that there's like a ton of practitioners in the field.
It's growing a lot, and it's kind of interesting. I was talking to my friend yesterday about just job security, and I was like, honestly, I'm not worried about money at all, because everything I'm kind of into is healing, and so needed with COVID. We need more death workers, and there's a lot of grief to be processed. So I think it's a really beautiful role. If anyone feels called to it, to definitely pursue it, because it's pretty accessible to get into the field.
So now how do you, because I can see we have quite a few people on here, how do you keep yourself grounded with all of this? Like, just with all that you're doing, and like you even said, with COVID and all of this stuff, how do you personally kind of go about life and keep yourself in the here and now?
Yeah, I love this question. I think it's so important, and it's honestly been a struggle. I had a question asked, like, what's been the biggest edge of my business or this launch? And it's like nourishing myself and taking my own advice. And so I love taking a bath. I take an Epsom salt bath every night, which is really helpful for cleansing, and then a shower after. So showers are great just as a cleansing, like literally all the water is coming down and you can envision just the day washing away.
Mm-hmm.
I love doing meditations in the morning. So I do insight timer every morning, and that's really nice. I sleep a lot. Like, I'm on my own schedule. I usually sleep like 8 to 9 hours a day. Like, that's a non-negotiable for me, and really protecting my energy. And I'm getting clear on that. Like, how do I feel after a phone call with a friend? Is that someone I want to talk to again? Or am
Mm-hmm.
I getting a lot of fear? So really monitoring my energy and like noticing who's sucking it away and who's adding to it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I love that honesty of, like you were saying, what's the edge for you? Because, well, whenever I talk to you, or whenever I hear you talk, your voice is like always so calming, and I'm like, God damn it, she's just fucking floating through life, just doing stuff, and I'm like over here like, what? Like, I feel like like someone gave me an injection of caffeine, like, constantly. And my boyfriend always loves to remind me, like, didn't you leave your last job so you would work less? And I'm like, I'm working to build something here, honey. And he's like, I know, I'm just saying, like, maybe you should, like, step away just so you can, like, eat some food, maybe. And so, and he'll be like, did you get water today? Like, and I'm like, no, and so it is challenging, taking that time. And so I love having people on here to be able to ask, like, how do you do that? And what are, like, the real tips that you do? And I found, for me, sleep is huge. Like,
Yes.
I have to get, like you said, like the 8 or 9 hours, like, yeah. Like, I'm like a, like 9, 10 hours. If I could do that every day, that would be lovely.
Right. I love sleeping so much. And I'm curious, are you into human design at all? Have you taken your test?
I have not. Tell
Okay,
me, what
I'll
is
send
this?
you the link. You can
Yes.
do it online. It's just human design, and
Mm-hmm.
there's 5 different profiles, and then
Mm-hmm.
it kind of goes in deeper, like 5 types. So I'm a projector. So my type, like, we work best 4 hours a day. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so validating to learn your type with human design. It's like a blend. It comes from like astrology and just like, it's a little woo woo, but even my
Mm-hmm.
friends that are not into the woo, they're like, this resonates so much with my working style, with how I process life. And it's really good to figure out how to run a business. And for me, like, I'm just very activated by other people's energies, and I need to
Mm-hmm.
work in small, short bursts. And I can't constantly create. It's all about nourishing ourselves. And I think that can help too, to figure out kind of your flow.
Yeah, that would be really cool, because I find that, like, I'm just constantly doing stuff, and I just keep telling myself it's one more week and I'll get ahead, and if I just do this one thing on the list, then I'll get there. And then another thing comes up, and another thing comes up, and another thing comes up, and, like you were saying, I see someone said agreed. Thank you, Rebecca. I like it. It also makes me think, because I have a cleaning person come in, and the cleaning person came, and I'm like, it surely cannot have been a month since they were last here, like, because they were just here. And I'm like, it's been a month since they were here, but I was so nose to the grindstone, and that was something that was so celebrated in my family of origin. And I'm like, gosh, I don't, even though I know I'm doing something I love and even though it lights me up, at the same time, I don't want to like look back at, this year of my life and be like, oh, I just, missed it. Or like,
100%.
yeah.
I
So,
totally feel that.
and it would be nice to know, like you said, like you work best for 4 hours. I think it would be nice to know that, because then it's like, okay, well, if it's short bursts, well, then that's something I can wrap my head around, versus like I wake up and I'm just like, that you see this list and I just keep thinking, if I get to the end of it, but the damn thing keeps getting more shit added on, and I'm like, gosh. So yeah, I like hearing other entrepreneurs, other people who are even in this wellness space and yoga space who still struggle to find that grounding and that connection.
Yeah, two things that have really helped me is just like mapping out my dream day. What is my dream day? What does it look like from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, with work involved? What do I want? Because I think sometimes when we don't know what we're aiming for, it's hard to get there. And then also Trello, I tell all of my clients use it with me. And then in Virgo Vibes, we go through how to use a Trello for a to-do list. So I do like a weekly task list, long-term goals, like all events, ideas. And that helps me see things. And you can label it like all of your tasks in different colors. So I'll see my list for the week and I'm with you. I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm going to finish all of this. And I started labeling like, green is like a money activity. Like, will this lead to sales? And I really don't care about money, like almost to a fault, where I was in the corporate world. Like I was making like 84 grand when I quit a year. And then I had to unpack that and make zero money for months. And I was so happy doing that. But now it's just like, you do kind of need to run a business with generating leads, generating sales so you can keep going. And so seeing your to-do list of like what will make me money, that's also more motivating to get those things done.
Yeah. I really like that, because that was me too. I was working at a place, you get your paycheck every 2 weeks. You don't really have to think about it. And then now it's like, well, I just want to help people.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, well, but then I also have, I have two people who I really enjoy working with, my social media person, Erin, and then Crystal. She helps with like, writing and organizing and make sure my voice is like not all scatterbrained. And so it's like, well, I really like them and I want to keep them. And so, so then I'm like super motivated to like do well so I can keep them. But then it's so funny because they'll be like, Laura, you got to also make money. And I'm like, oh yeah. I got to do that. That's right. But like, I just want to help people. And they're like, okay. So like, it's funny. You can see as they try to tell me things to do, they're like, remember, this is going to help people. We're going to charge, but it's going to help. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because like you need to help yourself first, right? So it's like by you having a salary that's comfortable for you and helps you live the life that you want, then you're able to pour from your own cup and help others. And I like helping people map out like their pricing. It's like, okay, I have a client who's trying to launch a breathwork business. And it's like, okay, well, if you're charging $90 for a breathwork session, you need to have like 20 new clients every month to hit your goals. Like that's a lot of new people. Are we having new clients every month? Or they repeat? And then it's like, what would be a fun high ticket offer that you could have that a few people do? Like doing a $500 retreat or something, like a mini retreat. So just like really focusing on like what is your pricing and does that make sense like for your own workload too? Because I don't think a lot of people think about that.
Yes, totally. Yes. And it's so crazy learning all of these new things, and selfishly, I've just had so much fun meeting all of these new amazing people along the way. And I'm ready for COVID to be done so I can go visit all my new friends.
Yes.
Is it killing you not being able to travel? Because I know that was one of the things that I loved hearing with your Instagram story takeover. And as someone who loves traveling, it's kind of killing me that I can't get out there.
Oh, 100%. I definitely get in like pity parties where I'm like, everything I like has been taken away. Like, I love like meeting new people. I love going to hostels, restaurants, having
Mhm.
friends, like dating. It's like I'm
Mhm.
living in my mom's basement, like not
Mhm.
seeing any men. Like, this sucks. But yeah, it's just kind of like trying to keep those travel friend
Mhm.
relationships alive. So that helps me a lot. And I really don't plan any trips. Like, I'm not one to like get excited about something that's like literally I don't know if it can happen. So
Yes.
I'm planning on moving. So I think Vegas
Yeah.
is where my new home will be in a few months, which is exciting.
Nice.
Very, very excited about that. So that's kind of been quenching my travel bug, just having that new opportunity.
And how come Vegas?
Yeah, a lot of people are like, what? I have family there actually. So
Cool.
they moved from Jersey like many decades ago and they love Las Vegas. So that would just be nice. And it's cheap. The weather's amazing. Winter is very mellow and it's driving distance to so many different states like California, Utah,
Hmm.
Arizona.
Yes. Yes,
Hmm.
that's awesome. Yes, the Instagram live I popped on last night, they're in Vegas and it looks awesome. So I think that you will definitely really enjoy it.
Yes, the mountains there are so beautiful. Like, I've never partied in Vegas. Like, I'm probably going to stay sober there. So it's definitely
Mhm.
going to be more the nature.
Yes, how exciting is that?
Hmm.
Yeah, I think if you go to Arizona, you would probably really enjoy like Sedona and you could check out all the crystals.
Yes, yes. I'm so into it. I just got a crystal Reiki healing session done by my friend, and she loves Sedona. She got all of her crystals there.
Hmm.
And she's like telling me all these different crystals to get. And I was just like, I want to wait until like I have a house to like have like a selenite wand and all of
Yes.
the different things.
Yes. And I know one of the things you briefly touched on, and again, we'll have to have you back on, is your yoni wand.
Yes, yes.
So
So
give people a little rundown of that because I love it.
I love this kind of stuff. So I have three, I guess, like unique things that people probably haven't heard about. So first with the Yoni wand, it's a G spot wand. It looks like an S, like kind of like a little S, and it's made of jade, I believe. And so with that, you do what's called vaginal de-armoring. So you just like get a little lube and then press inside of your yoni or your vagina, like the different areas and noticing the sensations and really like unlocking any pain, and usually like it just like is numb or painful down there, and then just kind of really releasing into pleasure. And then I use a yoni egg, which is like a crystal egg, and you can thread it with floss to make sure like you can take it out of you. And that's really great for healing trauma. You can have different stones for their different properties. And then it's great for the pelvic floor and creativity. So, kind of like physical and spiritual benefits. And then the third thing I've used is called a cervix serpent. And that is like a very long glass wand. And it's made of glass. And so
Mhm.
I've only seen them with glass so far, but it's made by the Yoni Pleasure Palace. And that is really great for cervical de-armoring and having like a cervical orgasm.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you talked about a cervical orgasm. So, about 20% of women can orgasm with through their cervix, or it's
Mm-hmm.
like their cervix is a part of their orgasm. And when they have a hysterectomy, if their cervix is removed, they sometimes will lose their orgasm, or they'll lose that deep sensation of an orgasm. But a lot of times surgeons will not tell them that. And so then they get very upset, obviously, and they're like, what the heck happened? And of course, we know pelvic floor physical therapists, sex therapists, other people know that that can happen about 20% of the time. So if we see the people before, we will explain that as part of your hysterectomy. If you choose to have your cervix removed, or if it needs to be removed, that can happen. And a lot of times the surgeons don't like that you say that, and they say, oh, the research is not completely agreed upon with that. And it's like, well, our research is agreed upon it. Your research might not be. So it is, so I think that's interesting that you talk about that, because it can be a big part of sexual pleasure.
Wow. Yeah. And to be honest, I haven't had a cervical orgasm yet. Like, I'm still in the de-armoring process. And I like to be really open with these kinds of things, because I hate when people are like, oh, yeah, like, have all these wands, like, I'm having orgasms all day. Like, it's really a very healing process. And like, I had a lot of unconscious encounters, like, when I was drinking, just having, hooking up with guys that weren't really like a match for me, and nothing, not to go into like non-consensual things, but just like not really like pleasurable things all the time. And with the cervical de-armoring, it's really like exploring your body and using your wand to really notice, like, what do you feel? And with the cervix, like, it's like a bulb at the end with the glass wand. And so like, you just kind of gently like tap it and just kind of explore everywhere. And so it really is just, like, a lot comes up. It's just a very like cathartic process. And with that, I recommend journaling. Like, afterwards, I try to journal, like, was this painful? Was it numb? Like, what was I feeling? What's happening afterwards? Because that's how we kind of move through these things.
Yeah. So I call that sensory mapping. And I think that's really, really cool. So I'll have people do that similar thing that you're doing. A lot of times I'm having them do that because they maybe had surgery and they've lost that sensation. And so they knew they had it before, and then like they've come to me and we're trying to regain sensation, whether that's external or internal. And so I will talk about, okay, we have to sensory remap the body. And that this can be someone who, like, maybe they've had a baby, maybe they had a vaginoplasty, maybe they had a hysterectomy. It could be all sorts of things. Maybe they slipped and fell on the ice and they had a nerve injury. And so, yeah, I think that that's really, really cool. But I would say I tend to have people use vibrators, because I'll have them turn the vibrator on to like get that kind of tactile feedback from the vibrator, and then turn it off. So I'll have to look into those, actually those yoni wands, because I bet you that would give me some more options for patients for things to do, which is really cool.
Yeah, totally. It's like such a beautiful practice. And a lot of the people into these crystal wands, they actually think, like, some are of the camp, like, vibrators can desensitize you. And like, they recommend even like not using a vibrator at first. But I believe, like, do whatever is best for your body and like feels good to your body. And if like a vibrator is the only way you can achieve an orgasm, or, do sensory mapping, like, I'm all for it. I don't think we should ever shame people for like what works for them, but just offer them like different ideas and say, hey, this is an invitation to think of this as a, differently, or, this is what people's experiences have been.
Right. Right. Yeah. I love that. I think that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that piece of it. And I can't wait to like go look online and see what I find.
Yes. There's so many.
Yeah.
Have fun.
How did you come about this?
Yeah, actually, so the yoni egg I heard about like years ago, and I ordered it off of Etsy, and I didn't really use it that much. And then I got into it again at Envision Festival at that red tent. There was a woman who runs a company who sells these wands and eggs, and she was selling them too. And so she told us all about like rose quartz is really good for heart chakra, and like jade is good for this. And I didn't realize how all of the crystals kind of corresponded with different energies and like healing properties. So that was really cool. And it just like, yeah, like in quarantine, I'm like, if I'm single, it's the best time to explore my body. Like, we're all horny in quarantine. I mean, I guess not everyone, but
no, yeah, that's awesome. So it's really funny that you bring up the different, how the different stones connect with different things. So actually the blog post that I posted this week talks all about the Mula Bandha. And because you hear about it all the time in yoga, Mula Bandha, Mula Bandha, Mula. And so talks about that, and then talks about the sacral and root chakra and how to work those like chakras and energy for like sexual awareness and all of that. So if you haven't given that one a look, give that blog a look, because I delved into that a bit more. So it was really, really interesting researching about that, and how so many people think the sacral chakra, which is chakra number 2, is our sexual energy, but really the root chakra, which is like our safety, they think of that as like your firewood. And then the second chakra, the sacral chakra, is like the fire itself. And so if you don't have the wood, you can't have the fire. And so as I was like looking more into it, a lot of times they're like, everyone will work so much on their sacral chakra, but really they need to get to that safety. And it's like, well, obviously if we're nervous, if we're worried, of course we're not going to be able to relax into intimacy, arousal, pleasure, all of these different things. So I just found it really interesting. And then I also found it really interesting about Mula Bandha, because I always hear that cued and I never hear the other 2 bandhas cued. And so it was interesting learning more about that.
Yeah, I'm super into that. With my yin practice last week, we did a sacral chakra activation, and I focused on the root chakra before. And I agree with the pandemic and just looking at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs too. It's like, if we're not feeling safe and like we don't have like a house and food and job, like you're not going to have those sexual desires. And I know after like Black Lives Matter, like just with all of the killings and George Floyd, like I had no energy for anything. I was just extremely sad. And it's like really honoring that process and like grieving. Like you should be horrified and upset, like that's normal, and honoring your body. But knowing that it is natural to have a sex drive, like when everything is, when your life is a little squared away, like, because I have a lot of friends on antidepressants and they just don't really have a sex drive. And I'm a Scorpio, like I tend to have a lot of sexual energy. So I try not to like push, how I feel on others, but it's really healthy to have that drive and kind of exploring like, the side effects of medications you're on.
Yes. So cool. You are such a wealth of knowledge. I feel like we could have like 5 million side conversations.
I know. I love everything. I love chatting with you.
I know. So, where can everyone find you? Because I don't want IG to cut us off and not get that piece of things.
You're so sweet. Yeah, at Love by Caro. So LOVE by Caro, CARO. Is my Instagram, and then I'm lovebycaro@gmail.com if you have any questions, and my website is lovebycaro.com. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Yay.
I'm happy to chat with anyone interested in any of these things.
Yes. It's so awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. I definitely want to order some of that cacao, and I need to figure out, how do I schedule in? That's the only way anything happens, is if I put it on my calendar, because if it's on the calendar, then it's happening. And I really, really want to delve into some of these offerings, because I think that they're so, so needed, and I'll make sure to share them on my platform.
It sounds great. Thank you so much, Laura.
Yes, thank you.
Nice chatting.
Yes, have a wonderful rest of your night.
Have a lovely night. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Figuring out the right way to connect your breath and body can be really, really challenging. But don't worry, I've got a video to help you do that while also unlocking your pleasure. Check it out, and I'll see you over there.